welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Nonprofit Show. I'm super excited because today we have two powerhouse women on. Yany San Luis. Yany is somebody that we've had on the show previously. I was captured by all the things that you've had to say, so I'm so excited. Yany, it's been more than a year, I think, since we've had you on.
It's been a minute, but there's lots of great things going on in our industry, and I'm excited to share today and be on with you all.
Oh my gosh, we're really excited. I'm just thrilled as well to have Wendy F. Adams, CFRE, back joining with me as my intrepid co-host. Team building, leadership, these are really topics in Wendy's house. So we're going to really dig into this because we're going to be talking about passion and mission and team development. And wow, at this point in time in our sector, we need to really be talking about this now more than ever, I think. And so this is going to be an amazing conversation that we have. You know, something that's also amazing are our presenting sponsors. They include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Nonprofit Thought Leader, Fundraisers Friday. Our new episodes on Fridays just dedicated to fundraisers. It's really a great episode. Your Part-Time Controller, Third Sector Company, and Clear Impact. I'm Julia C. Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy, joined by my amazing friend, Wendy F. Adams, CFRE, CEO of Cultivate for Good. And so, Wendy, always great to have you on with me. But when we talk about development and training, you're my go-to gal. So this is going to be really fun to be having this conversation with Yany San Luis. Yany, I was saying to you in the green room, I want to be around you because I want to be a woman who wins.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. We want more women winning, and frankly, all of our nonprofit organizations.
Yeah, we do. Well, so talk to us about what the Win Woman does and tell us where you're coming to us from.
Absolutely. So thank you, everyone. And so grateful to be here today. I'm Yany San Luis. I go by Yany. I'm the CEO and founder of the Win Woman. We are the go-to experts that nonprofit CEOs trust to help them with strategy, growth, and impact. And so we host a full suite of services for our nonprofit clients. And frankly, we're basically an outsourced development team. We have a strong focus on helping with the revenue generation side and helping with the impact and how we impact reports. So that's a little bit about what we do and how we do it.
Amazing. Now, at one point you were sharing your knowledge and also teaching, which I can't imagine adding that to your plate in the university system. Are you still doing that?
I am. So I am going on 8 years strong teaching and recently won some Best Professor and Best Course awards. So I'm thrilled to be a marketing professor at Florida International University. And we do a lot of work in helping teach graduate students really how to foundationally understand relationships, which we all know is at the core of how to work with people, but more importantly, for our nonprofit organizations to grow. So I'm thrilled to be sharing that with our next generation of leaders in college and collegiate space.
Wow, I love it. I mean, I'm amazed you can do all this.
Well, that's where I'm going.
Just sometimes I grab a couple of winks of sleep at night, but and then I just kind of supercharge myself like your iPhone next to the bedside. But no, I love it all. Frankly, I love to teach. I'm a teacher by heart, and so professing or being a professor is one of my greatest joys as well.
I love it.
Well, wow, Yany, you define what a win woman, like that's what you just spoke out. And I think what we are hearing is great passion, right? And how important that is in all that we're doing. And so I want to jump into our conversation. Okay, passion's wonderful and it's got to be there and it fuels. How does that look if there's no structure and that, we're just going off of the fumes of this is what drives me in that space of burnout?
There's so much that's to be said here. I one of the things that I want to kind of share, because I'm a numbers gal, so I have to kind of just share with the public and share with you all some of the things, some alarming things that we're experiencing now in the nonprofit sector. So right now, it's no surprise, but about 95% of nonprofit CEOs have a concern for burnout in their organization. 95%. We're talking about 95%. And that's a recent survey at the end of the year of 2024. So I say this because that is huge. And 50% of those folks are having trouble filling vacancies. And so what happens is that I have to tell everyone as a news alert, the mission's not enough to motivate people to come to work. And so it's a matter of how are the mission's one nice layer to really advocate and speak on behalf of, but it's not going to take home paychecks, right? It's not going to pay your bills. And it's one of those things that you need to start listening to your teams on what they need. And what they need is capacity. And so that's some of the things that we help our clients do is add capacity, being able to not just meet them at strategy, but really help them co-create and execute alongside them. And so that's a big piece that's happening. I'm thinking through, some of the solutions we're talking about, especially structures for teams, right? Especially when teams are experiencing shortages in their staff time or shortages in they're running lean teams. You have to think about how are we creating structures and repeatable tasks? How are we creating standardization? So SOPs are great, but again, AI is a great tool that we're using these days to kind of quicken up and fasten the way that we do work. It's a great tool, but how are we contributing to operationalizing some of the functions within the team so that they don't feel as pressured to continue forward on their own, right? Structure is going to be your winning piece in the way that you create that.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing you scream is sustainability. Like everyone knows that my heart is for the why. That's the passion. But you are looking at passion with sustainability. And that's 100%. The structure.
100% value with sustainability. We're always talking about financial sustainability with nonprofit organizations, but your team is financial sustainability, right? In the development sector right now, just to give you a perspective, we're still on average experiencing only 16 months on average, a current development officer is staying in their role. I mean, we can't afford that as a nonprofit, right? And so it's a matter of like, how are we ensuring, first of all, that we're setting up these folks for success and giving them the runway they need, right? So if you're hiring a seasoned development officer or a junior DO, do you have already the infrastructure to even take them on, right? So do you have a CRM system already ready to go, or are you expecting them to build everything and also raise money, which is unrealistic? And so these are the things that we are assessing and addressing with our clients.
It's so interesting because when you talk about development, especially in the fundraising piece of it, I think that there are a lot of organizations that kind of start with, if we bring the fundraiser in and they crank things up, then we can make the investments.
Oh, right? Yes.
And then we just corrupt their ability, I think, in so many ways. So I want to talk about this from another level about understanding development, because it seems to me oftentimes that we'll worry about the highest levels within our organization, the C-suite, or maybe just a couple people. And then we kind of forget about everyone else, or we think, oh, we don't really need to make those investments. You kind of, I think, have a thought on this about stagnation, and how should we be thinking about this, Yany?
I think about stagnation, we have to think about I always think about the decision maker, right? The C-suite that's making the decision on investing. And I think about, is this a problem to solve for? And my answer is a resounding yes, right? Stagnation in a nonprofit team often just stems from the lack of investment on team growth. And when people don't develop, when they disengage, we've heard around the pandemic, and we're post-pandemic now, the quiet quitting, that's still running rampant these days. Right. And so, and especially when, I'd love to kind of even talk about Gen Z for a second, especially when Generation Z now is getting older. They're in their later 20s, the upper echelon of Gen Z, they're talking about, they're putting specific boundaries on when they are coming to work, when they're done with work. Gone are the days, frankly, that you're just finishing off a task and they stop at 5 or they stop at 6 p.m. This is something that is inherent in this generation. And so I say this because how are we thinking about those solutions? Solutions are a combination of mentorship opportunities, leadership trainings, right? Regular performance and impact assessing. How are we actually creating internal pathways for growth for these employees so that they can see a future with this organization, right? How are we actually speaking to this, not just on the yearly performance evaluation, but on a quarterly basis? We're talking to them about these things, right? And we're investing in their growth and their opportunities. And so this is a way that we're thinking through how to identify stagnation immediately, how to identify disengagement, and how to frankly conquer it.
So I got to jump in here and ask a follow-up question, because what I'm hearing from older leaders is that they're so frustrated with this lack of loyalty and people thinking that if they stay with an organization too long, it looks like it's problematic, and that, you know, they're not growing. So I feel like leadership is pulling back from making these investments because they're like, why the hell do this? They're just going to leave anyway. You know, you brought that stat up, which we talk a lot about, that comes from AFP. 16 to 19 months is the average duration of a development director, which is horrific. But I can see leadership just saying, yeah, I'm not going to make this investment because why? They're just going to go anyway. And I'd love to get a response to that. Like, how do we go back and sell that?
You know, this is something where I continue to think about how loyalty is this two-way street, right? I think about this in the sense of when I coach my students in class and even my clients when they're out for interviews, right? We've conducted a number of things with our clients and helping with staff augmentation, and we're sitting in these interviews with these folks, right? And I am a fan of non-traditional interviewing in the sense that I want these folks to not only just wait to the end to ask question, but this is a two-way street relationship. I want to know, I'm interviewing you for the job, not just you're interviewing me, right? And so I say this because loyalty goes two ways. And I always think that this industry, because I have to say, unfortunately, hate to say be the one, but normally the nonprofit industry sometimes is a little behind on some of the, you know, cutting edge practices, right? And so I say this because one of the things you got to think about is, where do you want to lose the money? You know, you're losing the money on the back end with the turnover, and you're constantly over and over and over again. But if we're co-creating a career experience for these folks, if we're consistently investing in their time and efforts and talent, well, then we're going to see the loyalty come through, right? We're going to see the investment come through. We're going to see that they're going to see that we're investing in them. And so it's a matter of, you know, that's to me a huge red flag, frankly, is when the board members are saying, you know, this is more of a cost center versus an investment center for our revenue generator. Retaining talent, make no mistake, is not a cost center. It is an investment center to increase your revenue. And so the minute that we start reframing ourselves to think of it that way, we're going to, unfortunately, if we don't, we're going to unfortunately just stick to the same practices. And so for us, you know, it's a holistic approach when we're working with our clients. We want to make sure that we're also working with the board members to reframe their thinking about how these things are coming to be. Because what's happening, it's one of two things. It's either you're getting on board with investing in your folks on the early end, or your organization can cease to exist. And so it's a matter of like, you either innovate or you die. So it's a matter of like, how we're working through that. So it's not a cost center. It's a revenue generation to invest in your people.
Well, and Yany, you hit a point that I want to emphasize before we move forward. And that's in the space of, it starts early. It's the beginning of the conversation, right? It's in that interview, and recognizing that it is a mutual conversation. And so career development, what does that look like? What does that look? And asking that question, because that's going to speak into, well, how am I going to be invested in? Am I going to be invested in what, and setting those expectations. So I love that you hit on right from the start. This is not down the road that we start digging into that.
You know, I always think that the question that we get in interviews of, what's your 5-year plan is a little superficial in general. But I will say the organizations that actually write it down, make a note on that prospective employee's file and follow up with them about that actual 5-year plan are the ones that are retaining this talent, right? So how are we actually making notes on these things? How are we actually again, I don't believe in yearly assessments. I believe in quarterly assessments for our team members, because it takes a quarter to see what you're doing now is not going to work in the next 90 days. What you invest in now is either going to benefit you good or bad in the next 90 days. You'll see it on your bottom line. And I say this to our nonprofits all the time. Your nonprofit should not be run as a no profit organization. Just because you are a nonprofit doesn't mean you're a no profit. And with that said, you need to ensure that whatever investment you're currently making, you're already seeing those outcomes 90 days from now. So that's the reason why you should be having pulse checks. Managers should be having these conversations with their team members early and often.
Thank you for saying that. And boy, your comments have just like lit a fire under so many of our viewers.
I hope so. I want it to.
Yeah, comments are coming in. People are like, yes, we needed to hear this. This is great. I want to dig down a little bit in that, because when we talk about investing in our systems, I love that you brought up a time frame of 90 days. I think that's just fabulous, because we can be really seeing what's going on. But Wendy, I was really interested in getting some of your feedback, because it makes it two directional. When somebody knows, they're not just like waiting till that year point, right? I mean, it makes it more of an engagement.
It is. I mean, it's what we're talking about doing externally. We're doing that internally, right? At that point in time, and recognizing that we talk about SMART goals.
Right.
And are they really smart if they're just written down and stuck to the side, and we don't actually come back and take a look at how are things moving? Do we need to make a course correction? Is it in alignment with not only, again, back to the why, the passion and the why of the organization, but for the individual? Again, that conversation starts up front. Is there alignment there? And so, yeah, this is the conversations that we need to be having. And I know everybody's throwing their hands up, or, C-suite is like, oh, does it even matter? Well, it does.
Right.
We got to stay the course to it. We actually have to do it and walk it out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we have a tool, just to give you a perspective, Wendy, that we're using with our clients. And I share with you all this piece as well, because you can, it's easy to just kind of buy it yourself. We use a 12-week year, which 12-week year, it equates into 90 days. And part of the methodology of the 12-week year is that you're having weekly accountability meetings with your teams. You are checking in if you're on track or off track of the goals and the tactics. So you can already see 2 weeks in a row some of the things that are being employed by the team, whether or not you're on track or off track, so you can course correct.
Yes. Love that. Yes. I love that, because
that's phenomenal.
I think that what happens is when you get to that annual point, and whether it's a review or you're looking at your goals, and you don't, the year end is coming up and you're not going to make the goals, it's natural to disengage.
Correct.
On both sides disengagement. Now it's like, why are we doing this? And someone's like, why am I showing up every day?
Well, and that's the piece that, frankly, with the 12-week year, that's so great. I remember as a development officer, I'm a seasoned development officer by trade, by practice. And I remember at the end of the fiscal year, those last 30 days was a race for cash, right? And we raised normally in 4 weeks more than we raised, in like the last quarter or in the last 6 months. And the reason was because there wasn't this arbitrary deadline, right? There was a push to do more in less time. And that's what happens, right? When you're looking at things in quarter basis, right? You can always set your goals for a year, but if we're measuring quarterly, we're going week to week accountability, understanding what's happening, you can immediately see stagnation. And so that is when you can kind of pulse check and address that with your team accordingly.
I love this piece, and I really am challenged by the thought. When the three of us are talking, it seems so logical and so normal, but this is not the case. For some organizations, it's just going to be like, what? It's going to be kind of like a shock, right? And so I want to move into this last part with you about talking about our partners and the people in our communities. What should that look like?
I think a lot of times is you have to think about, I've always talked about leveraging, how are we leveraging your board, your stakeholders, your funders in non-traditional ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that we need to be, in fact, I know for a fact, funders are constantly and consistently saying, I don't always want to know that everything is rainbows and unicorns in the sense that everything is wonderful. I want to be brought in as a strategic partner, as a strategic advisor about how we can deal with some of these issues, right? These are some folks, especially if you have an incredible, I say there's dysfunctional boards all over the place, right? Nonprofit, that's happening, but there's an opportunity here to also further cultivate your funders and your board members and leverage their expertise. Maybe they have some expertise in even staff development topics, right? Some leadership things that we can already enable. I know that there's always a question of like, how much is this going to cost? So I just want to kind of just put it out there. It's not a one-stop shop solution of going on a retreat with your team members, right? Only, or it's really an opportunity to how are we micro learning, frankly, again, on a quarterly basis, how are we infusing our team with micro learning opportunities and enabling their skill set, like upskilling them. Part of that is to be able to hire, consultants. You can always do that. The cost of these things, just to kind of team training, just to give you a backup perspective, we're talking a little bit about anywhere between 8 to 10% of your payroll over a course of a year. So if you allocated that, that's normally industry average of how much more or less you should be spending on team training, upskilling, and talent development, right? When we're thinking about stakeholders that we can leverage for these things, I mentioned the board members, I mentioned the funders. Our work when we are hired to do this type of work is not just a one and done, a lunch and learn and leave. I always tell people, that hire us, I'd love to come and speak to you all. However, I think it's going to be a more impactful project if we are combining the learning experience. We're microdosing the learning experience over a course of either 6 weeks, 8 weeks. We're measuring how the responding is happening, especially if we're upskilling, let's say, a development staff member. That's how we are engaging and leveraging our stakeholders, right? And that's where we can begin to diagnose the problem, but also just leverage what we already what we have existing in the actual organization.
Well, it takes collaboration. What we're saying here, from theory to reality, right? These stakeholders want to not be put in a silo. We talk about breaking silos down internally. Same thing. They have more than just their treasure that they bring to the table. They have that time and talent to say, hey, here's how we're going to be able to do today and be here tomorrow and the next. And so I think having that conversation and space around the table, that's what I'm hearing from you. And that is a game changer. Julia, you said it. For some, this is just going to be like, what? I mean, our funders just do this. No, they don't. And they want to do more.
That's the problem as well, right? Is, I always love about, the ABCs, always be closing, but I actually kind of like to take it in the sense of always be cultivating. And I say that because board members can, this can go wrong when board members lack clarity on their role beyond fundraising. Like we normally want our boards to be fundraising, but man, if we're able to cultivate them in a different way with a different skill set, both our board members, our funders, that's going to be a great way to engage them further into the organization and unlock maybe some capabilities we didn't know that they had. If they don't have the capabilities, and I always say, there's incredible consultants, shameless plug, we can help you with that. But I will say that there's a combo, right? I always love engaging, even in trainings, the already existing talent. In fact, it increases buy-in from the team when we're engaging that. And normally when we're doing that with our nonprofit clients, we are engaging their own stakeholders because it drives the message home.
Well, I feel like, that as a funder, you want to protect your investment. Right. And so if you have an organization that comes back to you and says, we need help here, or we need to, engage in some new thought or direction or leadership, that's a good investment, right? That's not
right.
just oh no, there's a huge problem. That's an opportunity. I think you have to shed a lot of fear to go back to those parts of your stakeholders in your community and as woman up and say, I've got these problems, I need this help, because we've been informed that money follows winners. And so we don't often want to raise our hands and say, oh, we need some help over here. And so it's I think a different mentality for a lot of folks to be able to say, I'm going to go back into my community and say, I need this type of training. How can you support this? Can you fund this? Can you offer us, time, in your facilities, and all of these different costs that the inputs that are there, I think is something we need to look at, and we're afraid to do that. But I also feel once you do, then you learn, holy cow, this works, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have to tell you, I'm always a huge fan of unique cultivation opportunities with the stakeholders, right? And I have to say, this is an opportunity for you to engage your stakeholders in a different way, right? I mean, can you imagine if you're going to your private foundation CEO and you realize that they also teach in different topics, right? Or a subject matter expert in marketing or what have you. And instead of just asking them for the grant, which you normally would, you'd be top of mind for them, right? We always we always share with our clients the nonprofit organizations that are top of mind, meaning you are engaging, you're cultivating them consistently in a unique way, not just impact numbers, but you are absolutely nurturing the relationships, are the ones that are going to stay top of mind when funding opportunities come into play. And so this is an opportunity for you to think outside the box in the way that you can cultivate your donors and your stakeholders and your board members. One, also add some capacity for yourselves, and be in that space where you want their thought leadership, you want them to engage in a different way with you. And so
you're deepening those relationships because you're saying, hey, I see you as the resource that you are, and aligning what's passionate to them, what makes sense to them with what you're doing. That changes, like you said, and brings that top of mind, like, oh, they see me more than just. And Julia, you said something that was so key, and that is a change in mindset that also comes along with a change in our vocabulary, going from, and you did it when you were speaking it out, from problem to opportunity. The way that we present, what is happening and share, first of all, let's share it. And then how we are, that brings people in at a whole different level. This is exciting.
Absolutely. I mean, I will even just share, we have an executive forum that we bring together every month with nonprofit leaders. And I will share with you all that one of the things that came out was the fact that your funders, your stakeholders, and your team, frankly, doesn't want you to operate from a place of desperation. It's unattractive. It's unattractive in a relationship. So why wouldn't it be unattractive in traditional opportunities? When you're dealing with donors, right? The coveted Sabrina Carpenter says, I can't relate to desperation, and neither can your stakeholders. And so if you're always coming from a point of, we need money, we need help, all this and that, woe is me, nobody wants to fund that, right? It doesn't seem secure and stable. But if you are cultivating, the key here is cultivation with your internal stakeholders, with your external stakeholders. When you cultivate them properly, well, then you can be vulnerable enough to share what's happening within the organization so that they can help you adequately. And so that's the name of the game, everyone. It's really cultivation of your internal and your external stakeholders.
Yeah.
Well said.
Well said. This has been great. Yany, I am so delighted that we got you back onto another episode of the Nonprofit Show. Especially excited to have you along with the brilliant Wendy Adams. I mean, this is super, super fun for me. Yany San Luis, founder and CEO of The Win Woman. Check out thewinwoman.com. You can learn more about Yany, her team, and the things that they do in our sector. I thought it was magical in the very moment that we got going this morning, Yany. You said, I think you said this on air, not in the green room, but at the heart, you're a teacher. and that you like to share, and you do it so beautifully. I feel so empowered whenever we talk with you, and so excited to see the opportunity and the possibilities for success. And we need that in our sector now more than ever. We really, really need to be leaning into the exciting opportunities and the positive changes that we make, because it's real, it's needed, and it really affords us the lifestyles that we have in so many ways because of what the nonprofit sector does. Okay, time for me to step off my soapbox, but I do believe that's true.
Agreed. Sharing in the brilliance. So I'm grateful to have been here, Wendy and Julia. Thank you for having me, and thank you all who have tuned in to watch this segment.
Yeah, it's been really a lot of fun.
Yany, you took us to school, and that success kit has been filled today. Thank you.
I'm so glad.
I love it. I love it. We had so many great comments, but the last one that just came in said, "Well said."
That's great.
Love it. Hey, another thing that's well said is the support that comes to us from our amazing presenting sponsors. They include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Nonprofit Thought Leader, Fundraisers Friday, Your Part-Time Controller, Third Sector Company, and Clear Impact. These are the folks that are making a difference in so many lives, so many organizations across this country. Ladies, as we end each and every day, we end with this mantra, and it's really powerful today. It goes like this: to stay well so you can do well. Thank you, ladies.